Joining me on the show right now, Baby Talk 360, we have Stacey Harrison, registered nurse and a clinical educator for Cells for Life. Stacey, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Aaron.
So we're talking today about Cells for Life. We're talking about blood banking and all the interesting information that goes along with it. And there's so much that people don't know. So before I ask you any questions, kind of just take me through Cells for Life and the type of company that you guys are.
Well, Cells for Life, we are a 15-year-old company now. We started in Markham, Ontario. We basically store cord blood for parents. What happens is when a baby is born, we can basically take the cord blood from the umbilical cord and placenta, process, cryopreserve it, and store it if ever it's needed down the road. So we've been doing this now for about 15 years, and the company's definitely grown. People have definitely become more educated, and they've seen the importance of doing something along these lines. So just a few years ago, we actually outgrew our space in Markham, and we now are very proud to say that we have a state-of-the-art lab at Toronto General Hospital. We are the only cord blood company that stores cord blood in a hospital setting. It's an amazing, secure facility. So in addition to our two sites in Markham and Toronto, we also have an office in Montreal and an office in Calgary. So basically we're able to give Canadians a lot more access to our company and information. In addition to that, we also offer online webinars and information sessions throughout Canada, essentially.
Okay, so we have a whole bunch of questions here from people on Facebook and on our site as well. People have been emailing us about this. You know, when did cord blood banking really start, and what was the importance about it when it started, and why did it start?
Well, the first cord blood transplant actually occurred in 1988, and it was actually for a little boy from the U.S., and they actually performed the cord blood transplant in France. And actually, I should say it was the first sibling-to-sibling transplant that occurred. So he used, I believe it was his little sister's cord blood, to treat something called Fanconi's anemia. So from there, people started to take notice that maybe this is something we should start looking at. So after that, banks started to pop up sort of throughout the world, basically. The U.S. has quite a few banks. Canada definitely has quite a few banks in most major cities. We started started up with, offering it to basically the GTA and started branching out from there. Obviously, anyone around the world can access any bank that they want to. We do ship from all over the world as well. So, basically the importance was seen that this is something that if ever a stem cell transplant is needed, cord blood basically gives you the same benefits that bone marrow stem cells do without the painful invasive surgery that's required when harvesting bone marrow, plus the extensive search that's often required, which can take up to 10 months.
Okay, so I'm just going to read off a few questions from people that have been emailing us, and then you can kind of give us the 4-on-1 on all these things. So one from our Facebook, someone writes, can a doctor refuse to collect the cord blood?
A doctor can refuse to collect the cord blood. This very, very rarely happens, but I won't say it never, ever happens. In my 10-plus years now of being in this industry, I've only ever come across one physician that would not collect. In that instance, sometimes we can make other arrangements, but yes, you could run into that. It's always a good idea to speak to your doctor beforehand, let them know that you are planning on collecting cord blood, and if there's going to be an issue, I'm sure they will probably let you know at that point.
Another email we have is, how is cord blood stored?
So cord blood is actually stored in liquid nitrogen. So we store in vapor phase. There are two ways to store. You can store in liquid phase or vapor phase. So it's stored at minus 190 degrees Celsius. And basically, the bottom of the tank essentially contains the liquid nitrogen. And then as you come up through the tank, it's stored in vapor phase. And vapor phase is actually believed to be the better way to store. There's less chance of cross-contamination between samples. Now, with saying that, any sample that goes into a tank is screened and in isolation until we get all results back. So every sample that goes into a tank is clean, but it is recommended that for all safety precautions to store in vapor phase. So that's how we store, and that's how any good bank is going to be storing their cord blood.
How is it retrieved?
So our system basically works on barcoding, so we know exactly where that sample is going to be within that tank. And our tanks hold about 5,000 samples. So basically we know which pod to go to, and essentially we just go in and take it out. Obviously the person that's doing that is quite safe in terms of keeping their skin protected and everything else. But basically just go in and retrieve that. Now, something else just to mention that probably nobody would ask because they wouldn't know is we are one of the only banks in Canada to have a cryo cart. And a cryo cart means that you actually have unlimited time to work on a sample. So most banks that are retrieving a sample are under a time constraint. They only have a certain amount of time and they can manipulate that sample before they need to either get it back in or start the thawing phase. So we actually have this cryo cart. So we go in, we get it. Anything we need to do, it's sitting on a bed of liquid nitrogen on this cryo cart.
So Cells for Life definitely has that advantage, I would say.
Yes.
Another question, and this is one that I actually have, is how long can it last? So when we're doing stem cell, we're using Cells for Life for our daughter.
Right.
So how long can that blood last?
Well, we know for sure that it can last 22 and a half years. So in science, you cannot state longer than what you've done. So the oldest sample to date that's been taken out and tested, essentially, is 22 and a half years old. Now, it's stored the same way as sperm and embryos are stored, and those things have been around now 50-plus years. So we actually do believe that it's probably an indefinite thing. It could be, lifetime of the child, possibly useful for their children down the road. But as of now, I can very legitimately say 22 and a half years. And when the oldest sample is 30 years, I'm sure I will be able to sit here and say we are now able to store for 30 years.
So we had an email from someone, and they wanted to know, and they're actually in the States, and they write in, is there any risk to the mother when collecting the blood?
There is no risk whatsoever. What happens is when a baby's been born, we clamp and cut the cord. And the placenta remains in utero, usually anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes. So that's the time when we go in and we collect the cord blood. So it's completely painless. It's non-invasive. She won't even know it's being done. So there is no risk to the mother, and it also does not interfere whatsoever with mom and baby bonding, because again, you aren't even aware that we're doing it.
Now let's talk about the kit, because it's an interesting kit. It's actually, I love the fact that it's red and it's a nice little bag. I'm going to use it for like a little carry-on somewhere. But let's talk about the kit and what comes in the kit. Obviously, there's some forms to fill out when people get it. Tell me a little bit about the kit and how important it is. And I guess that's kind of why you guys designed it that way. So listen, if you have to run out when someone's giving birth, you grab it, you go.
Yeah, so what happens, essentially our kits actually stay at room temperature. When you get your kit sent to you, it remains at room temperature. When the cord blood's been collected, it remains at room temperature. But what you'll find when you open up the kit is the registration package. At the time that you're given the kit, there's a very small amount of paperwork that needs to be performed. When the cord blood comes back to us, that's when we want to have the remainder of the information filled out. So you have lots of time to do that. So in the kit, you'll find the collection bag, you'll find cleaning preps for the collection process. You'll find blood tubes. We need to have a blood test done at the time of labor from mom. And so basically that's essentially what you find in there. And yes, we do have some added features in our kits. Because we do ship around the world, essentially, we need to make sure that those samples that are coming back that might be taking 24 hours plus are not going to run into any temperature variances. So we've really taken every precaution to make sure that that sample stays at a stable room temperature the entire time. So there's an added gel pack that goes around the sample that's then put into a foil pouch, and then basically it's packaged up. So it's really simple, but we've definitely made sure that there's not going to be any temperature variance.
And most, and I would say most hospitals or doctors, they understand the procedure that you're going to be banking your blood. They understand it and they know what's to be done.
They do. I mean, cord blood banking now has become a much more common thing. 10 years ago, there were the odd hospitals where they would actually be calling us to say, we've never done a collection. What do we do? And we're there for them if they need that. We're definitely there to help educate them. But in this day and age now, it's very seldom that you're going to find a physician that has not collected cord blood. Yeah. It's so common.
So say, for instance, perfect example with myself, with Cells for Life. How far in advance does someone have to actually register, the baby or before the birth in order to actually have blood banking with Cells for Life?
Well, we like to have parents contact us anywhere between 32 to 36 weeks. That's a pretty good time. It gives you time to ask your questions. It gives us time to either direct you to where the registration package would be online or to have one sent out to you, and gives you time to think about it and get in and get your kit if that's what you want to do.
Another question on email for you, Stacy. If for some reason the cord blood cannot be used after shipping, do you have to pay? Do you get reimbursed?
So do you mean pay for the processing or pay for the shipment?
I guess the processing, everything.
Okay. So with Cells for Life, we only actually charge for the kit initially. There is no further charge until the cord blood has been processed and it goes into storage. So if for any reason it's a low volume, for whatever reason we cannot store that cord blood, then there is no further charge. Now, we actually have less than 5% low volume rate. So most samples do make it to storage, obviously 95% or more. So it's pretty rare that they don't make it to storage, but there would be no further charge if it didn't.
Hey, this is a great question, actually, that we had on our Facebook site on Baby Talk 360. How does blood banking work when it comes to identical twins?
Well, we still like to have both samples collected. So some people will think that if it's identical twins, that they only need to collect for the one twin. We do still like to go ahead and collect for both. Basically, to have more than one sample is always a better thing. It just gives you more options available to you. With twins as well, you sometimes can get lower, not a true low volume in our sense, but the samples may not be as big as, say, a single baby that's weighing, 9 pounds. You might be having a 5-pound baby, so the more cord blood, the better. Obviously, that identical twin is most likely, obviously, going to be a perfect match for the other. So you do have the option to collect just one, but it's always a good idea to collect for each child that you have.
Interesting. Damn those identical twins. Mm-hmm. They make things so difficult.
Yeah, double everything.
How long after the cord blood is collected does everything need to be received by your bank over here, depending, I guess it's in Toronto. So what is the time frame?
What time do they have?
Yeah.
Well, basically, we like to have everyone give us a call within 4 hours of the baby being born. So at that point, we then will arrange for shipping. So you no longer have to worry about coordinating your shipping, deciding who's going to bring it in, deciding what courier you're going to use. We deal with all of that. So it's one simple phone call before the 4-hour mark. We take care of the rest.
Now, actually, about shipping, we have another message from Donna on Facebook, and she writes, she lives in a remote northern community, and she says shipping from here is never overnight, and it's never easy.
Definitely. We have had people from remote areas send us cord blood. We have a shipping coordinator that actually has basically the time frames for every medical courier that's out there, and that's what you want to use when shipping a sample back. Shipping one out to you, a kit, does not need to be done with a medical courier. It can be done through FedEx, whichever. But shipping back, we like to use reputable medical couriers, and we have ones that we recommend, so we can give a lot of good information and help someone in that instant. But as I said, we we take care of the shipping to have it sent back to us. So at that point, we would just talk to the client and make sure that we've got everything in order, and we would make sure that it's going to get back to us in the time frame that's required.
Once again, the facility, and you talked about it, this is gorgeous, beautiful facility, state of the art. So let's talk about how safe and secure it is, because I've heard horror stories in the U.S. and some other places where they just, you pay for the storage and it's just, it's like out of someone's garage. It's horrible. And then you see the standards that you guys have set, the Cells for Life has set, these amazing standards. So talk to me about how safe and secure your facility is compared to, I guess, what else is going out there.
Well, as I mentioned before, we are the only cord blood company that stores in a hospital setting, so you really can't beat that. In terms of security, 24/7, part of the University Health Network. First response in terms of disaster, any type of issue that could arise. As well, we've taken so many steps just to ensure that our samples are safe. We have 28-day holding tanks that contain liquid nitrogen that not only are they computerized to refill the tanks, but also manually can refill tanks. So we always have basically a month's worth of liquid nitrogen on site at all times. As well, we are in what we call the basement at Toronto General Hospital, but essentially it's the receiving level. All of our tanks are on wheels, so if we ever needed to get a sample out, we just have to take that huge big tank, but wheel it right out the door. As well, we can get liquid nitrogen in if it's ever required. So, being in the basement setting, it's almost like a vault as well. So for security, there's no windows. I myself, I don't even have a pass card to get into the lab at Cells for Life. Unless you work in that lab, you do not have access to that lab unless you have authorization. So it's very, very secure. There's cameras. I mean, every single step has been taken. As well, there are a lot of banks out there that you're not sure, how they're operating, what their protocols are. So something that people really need to be cognizant of is making sure that the banks that they're looking at are accredited. And what we've done in Canada is we've gone through the American Association of Blood Banks, which is the AABB. And basically, they go out and they audit all the big banks out there that are requesting them to come in. It's a voluntary thing. You don't have to do it. But at the end of the day, any bank that is accredited, you know that they've gone through a rigorous, extensive audit of basically every area of that company with a fine-tooth comb, and you know that they're doing things properly. As well, Cells for Life has actually gone one step further, and we now are seeking FACT accreditation, which again takes us up another level. So any good bank out there is going to have sought out accreditation, so that's a really big one. And basically, they're doing things properly. Transplant physicians will readily accept from accredited facilities. They may question one from someone that's not. So when you're looking around and you're looking at different banks and you're wondering how they operate, just be aware that everyone's charging about the same amount of money. So you need to make sure that the one that you're going to use you feel comfortable with, and they have gone to the measures that companies like Cells for Life have gone to ensure that you can be secure with your decision.
Now, I have two questions for you over here. The first one is what happens, obviously we know this may not happen to Cells for Life, and it probably won't, but what happens, have you heard of stories where someone has banked their blood with a different company and that company goes out of business? What would happen to the blood?
Well, that's a good question, and I get asked that all the time. That did happen once, where a company did actually decide to not continue to be in operation, and another company just assumed storage of those samples. This is not something you can just throw away. So people get very concerned that if that was to occur, if a company went bankrupt, that they're going to have their sample discarded. And that's not going to be the case. Another company is just going to take over storage of that sample for them.
Perfect. Now, one of the things that I want to know about, and a lot of people ask, is what are some of the diseases and ailments and stuff like that can actually stem cells and blood banking will actually help to fix and cure. So, if I'm making that decision to bank this blood, not only can it help me as the father or someone in my immediate family, but what are some of the things that you've seen personally, that, Cells for Life, some stories that you've seen where the blood has been used and it has made a remarkable different effect on someone's life?
Cord blood stem cells are very often used to treat blood-borne disorders, and blood-borne disorders being leukemias, anemias, thalassemia, those types of things. So we often are seeing cord blood transplants occur for those reasons. So when you're talking about a blood-borne disorder, what you're essentially doing is you're going in and you are replacing a diseased bone marrow with a healthy new one, so that this disease basically stops. You are now creating a healthy new bone marrow, which is not going to now create this blood-borne disease, because that's where blood is formed, in the bone marrow. At Cells for Life, we've had samples that have been released and have treated things like leukemia, all successful. We have had a child use his cord blood to treat his neuroblastoma. That is not a blood-borne disorder, but what the doctors were able to do in this case was, because they knew they had cord blood stored, they were able to be very, very aggressive with his chemo and his radiation. And when you're very aggressive with chemo and radiation, you are killing off cancer cells. But when you kill off cancer cells, you're also going to kill off a lot of good, healthy cells. And that is where needing a bone marrow transplant usually comes into play. So if doctors know that there's a rescue sitting in the bank, they will be much more aggressive, eradicate that cancer, and then go in and rescue them with that cord blood. So cord blood often is used to treat those blood-borne disorders where we can basically stop that disease, or in cases where we're able to go in and replenish a depleted bone marrow. In terms of regenerative medicine, there's some really good clinical trials going on right now with cerebral palsy, juvenile diabetes. We should have those results by summer, and we're looking quite forward to getting those. They're pretty encouraging at this point.
Now, can the blood just specifically be used for immediate family, or can it be used for anybody?
Well, usually it's immediate family. So a sibling has about a 75% chance of matching another sibling and a 25% chance they're going to be a perfect match. It can be used by moms and dads. when you start getting into cousins, aunts and uncles, grandparents, you're really not probably going to have as good of a chance of having a match. We're really looking more at immediate family members.
Okay. So what I want to know is, I mean, obviously we know there's a processing fee. So minusing that processing fee, let's talk about that yearly cost. And I think it's like $125 a year. It's not that much money when you think about it in the long term for that insurance policy. But I mean, Cells for Life offers different payment plans. They offer all these different things. What to you is a big benefit in terms of the cost structure that you guys offer?
Well, I think that the fact that we, initially only charge for the kit, is a big thing, because parents have that concern about, if my cord blood doesn't actually get processed and stored, am I now going to have to go back and fight that company to get my refund? So we don't charge for anything else until we've actually done the service. The other thing that we do is that first year fee, we can actually split that over 3 months, so that people aren't having to pay that full amount right up front. So the remaining after someone has paid for their kit is $960. And we actually will split that over a 3-month period to make things a little bit easier. We don't start the annual storage fee until that child turns 1 year. At that time, the annual storage fee at present is $125. And what we have at Cells for Life is an 18-year contract, which basically means that we cannot increase your storage fee for 18 years. That is the term of the contract. If at any point that person wanted to take their cord blood out, discard it, whichever, there's no penalty for that. So they have every option to take it out. They're not locked in. But we cannot raise that storage fee for 18 years. We also allow people to pay storage fees up front, the 18 years all at once. You save about 3.5 years if you do that. And people always ask, what if they have to take out their sample? Will they be reimbursed? And absolutely. They're reimbursed for the remainder of the contract term.
With everything that's around, Stacey, I want you to tell me overall, from Cells for Life, and obviously you're a registered nurse and you work for Cells for Life, but what are some of the biggest things and the biggest questions that you've actually heard, and some of the things, maybe the myths that you want to bust open right now, and just the overall message from Cells for Life and why people should bank their blood?
The major questions that we get asked all the time are a lot of the ones we've covered, actually. You guys have had some really, really good questions. The major ones would be, what if the company goes under? What would happen then? What are the major diseases that we're treating? Those types of things. And how long does it last? Those are the biggest myths that we have to dispel all the time. People think that it can only last for 18 years because our contract runs for 18 years. That has nothing to do with it. At age 18, the child also has to take ownership of that cord blood, because legally it's part of their body, and legally at 18 they become of legal age. So that is the other reason why our contract gets renewed at 18 years. So I think that the major myths would be sort of usage, when it can be used, when it's appropriate to be used. I think something people need to know too, and we're very careful to make sure people understand this at our information sessions, is that if a child is diagnosed with a bloodborne disorder at a very young age, and I'm talking age 2 or under, those doctors may not want to use their own cord blood to treat that disease. They do believe, or they could believe, that that cord blood is already predisposed to the disease. So what they will do at this point is look for a sibling. And a lot of cord blood transplants are actually done sibling to sibling. I'd say the majority are actually done sibling to sibling. So I think that's something that parents need to be aware of, because I think people get the myth or the misconception that cord blood can treat anything under the sun, and it doesn't matter what this child is diagnosed with, they're going to be able to use the cord blood to treat that child. It will depend on the type of disease that you're looking at treating. And obviously we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what that child would ever need it for, and we don't know if they're going to be diagnosed at a young age and have to look for another source. So those are things that I think parents need to be really aware of and educate themselves about, and that's something that we're really good at doing at Cells for Life, making sure that parents are very educated about what cord blood can and cannot do.
So it's kind of funny, because I'm, being a new parent coming up in the next month or so. Hopefully she comes on time. I keep thinking about the birth and all those things, and then I keep thinking, I've got to make sure that I have the Cells for Life kit beside me, and I call the number as soon as it happens within 4 hours. So it's very important to me, and especially I did my research. I'm the host of a baby show. I did my research. I looked at different companies, and I made the decision to choose Cells for Life, because not only about the reputation, but the fact that the company's been around for so long, that the company invests within the industry, and that it's one of the most highly respected companies out there. So I can't say enough for Cells for Life. It's absolutely fantastic. And if anybody wants to get in touch with Cells for Life for any type of information, how can they reach you guys? We have the website on the page right now, but if there's a phone number, how can they reach you?
Yes, there's obviously the website it's a great website. We have so much good information on there. We have videos. We also have a 1-800 number. It's 1-877-235-1997. So that's another way they can go about reaching us. And then from there they can be given a little more information in terms of actually meeting us. As I said, we do information sessions basically throughout Canada. So there's so many other ways to get some information.
Perfect. Stacy, thank you so much for joining, and I know we're going to have more because we're going to do another show. I'm going to talk about what it was like after banking the blood. You know, it's always great to talk about before, but I'm going through the whole experience right now, and before, during, and after. So we're going to talk to you a little bit later on about the whole process, the whole experience, and the fact that hopefully I'm going to be one of those people that can say our blood is secure with Cells for Life.